Welcome to Season 2 of GyrlSense. I'm Maria del Carmen, your host. Today's special guest is Yvette Frisby. Well, Yvette doesn't really need an introduction. I mean, who doesn't know Yvette? But just in case there is someone in the dark, Yvette received her undergraduate and graduate degrees from Springfield College in Human Services and in Human Service Administration. She is an adjunct at Bay Path University and Springfield College. Yvette serves on various boards and committees and is passionate for the positive development of young girls and women. Her daytime title is Senior Vice President of Operations and Administrative Services for the Urban League of Springfield. Without further ado, please welcome Yvette Frisby. Thank you so much for joining the GyrlSense family, Yvette.
Thank you for having me, Maria. Thank you.
So when I think of women in leadership role, or when I think of women empowerment, the first person at hand that comes to my mind is Yvette Frisby.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
From the moment that we were introduced, and the introduction was really by phone, actually, for some other, for teaching, actually, teaching interview. So did you always know you were a leader growing up, or was it something that was developed through experiences?
If I reflect back on my childhood, I was a middle child.
Okay.
So as a middle child, you would think typically it's the older child that is leading everybody. I didn't necessarily lead them, but I was the one that was making sure that everybody was always okay. So my mom was always like, I never had to worry about anybody outside getting into any trouble or getting hurt because you always made sure everything was okay. Now reflecting back on that, I didn't see myself as a leader. Okay. But in essence, I was.
So you were a leader as far as, see, that will tap into one of our the questions in the near future. Okay. But that serves to me that you already had that initial or natural instinct to lead. So that was in the household. Yes. How about publicly as a child, like in school? Were you part of any naturally part of any organizations, or did you feel the need to be an advocate for whatever cause?
No. I was no, not at all. Okay. I was the quiet one. Okay. Didn't enjoy the public speaking, didn't enjoy the debating, didn't enjoy the competition. I grew up playing tennis. Nice. My brother and I played tennis competitively. Nice. So elementary school and high school, I played singles and mixed doubles. So I was not the competitive one, nor the leader. Okay. And I remember my brother, and we still joke about it to this day, often saying when we were playing mixed doubles, Yvette, get that ball. And I'm like, you get it. Yeah. So no, so in the public, no, I didn't see myself as a leader, more of a team player, more of getting along with everybody, not taking the lead necessarily on anything. And growing up in the younger years, my brother and I were best friends, still are. So I found myself playing more with boys than with girls. So in that sense, there's no way I could be the leader. Right. So I was just getting along with everybody. So I didn't see myself as a leader. Okay. No in-school activities where I was in a leadership position or anything.
No. Okay. So did you experience any barriers during your career journey as a woman, or dare I say, as a woman of color? What was the journey experience throughout your career?
My first job was at Mass Mutual. I was a secretary there, and I like to think of all of my challenges and barriers as lessons. And so I think my very first one was there, and it was as an African American woman. But the lesson there and the positive that came out of that, I was getting less pay and probably less work than another woman that was in the department doing the same thing as me. And of course, I'm the African American and she wasn't. But the lesson there and the positive that came out of there was a woman, African American woman in the department, befriended me, told me about a position at the Urban League as a secretary, and said that she would give me a recommendation. And from that, I've been at the Urban League ever since.
Wonderful. And, you know, fast forward today in your experiences, perhaps through the lenses of someone else, within your family or friends or peers at work. Do you think that individuals still feel or experience those same challenges in the workforce?
In terms of
women of color?
I think they do. I honestly think they do, whether it's in a boardroom, whether it's in the position that they're in. I don't know how they overcome that. I think it's just a matter of looking at those experiences and dealing with individuals in each situation separately.
Correct.
But the situations still arise, and I'm not sure what's going to change that. It happens for all women, but specifically for African American women.
Correct.
Yes.
And the reason why I ask within your past, your leadership, how was it in your past, is because, you know, is there ever a time where anyone is sort of taken back that your current title is Senior Vice President of anything? Just, you know, like,
who are you?
You know, when you're like, oh, what's
there?
your title? Oh, I'm a Senior Vice President, but, you know, they're not going to hear the rest of what you're saying. It stops,
at that point.
At that point, it stops at a president. So, you know, what was how has the encounter been, either positively or is there ever an negative undertone towards it?
I think I get both. Okay. And I think the negative undertone is more when I get additional questions to determine how I got there or why I'm there. And so if the questions are more geared towards how I got there, then okay, I'm impressed with that because it's me giving some guidance. But when I feel the questions are more, why are you there? Then it's more negative in terms of them trying to figure out, well, what makes you so special? And not that I believe that I'm special. I work to get to where I am. I've been at the Urban League for 32 years now, serving in various capacities before I was actually able to take on a leadership position. And going back to school in my 30s to do undergrad, take a year off, and then do graduate school. So I think that I've worked pretty hard to get to where I am. So when I'm asked questions, I'm really never taken aback to the point where I don't give further guidance to say, okay, you can do it too.
Okay, wonderful. You hold this title at the Urban League, as you mentioned. What are some services, getting into the actual facility, well, what are some services that are offered at the Urban League?
The Urban League has been in existence, the Springfield Urban League has been in existence, I believe, 104 years now. I have not been there the whole 104 years, as you know.
I was going to say, you really look good.
And the service that we provide now, we do, of course, public policy and advocacy for any issues that are related to African Americans that arise specifically in Springfield or nationally, because we are part of the National Urban League. We fall under that umbrella. Specifically, the Urban League of Springfield, we have our foster grandparent and retired and senior volunteer program. We have about 150 volunteers. Those are seniors in that program, and they are stationed in various organizations and schools throughout the city where they serve as support in the various classrooms and organizations, and they're called foster grandparents because it's typically with young children. And we also have our after-school programs. We have the Big 3 STEM program, which is our high school component, and we have our Be the STEM program, and both of those programs are STEM related. Science, technology, engineering, and math, for those people that don't know. And that's to introduce young people to the STEM fields, to hopefully get them interested in going into them higher education and career-wise. And then we also own and operate Camp Atwater, which is the oldest African-American camp of its kind in the country. We will be celebrating 100 years next year. And that camp is located in Worcester County, and it's for African-American youth between the ages of 8 and 15 years old. It's a summer residential camp.
That's really interesting. You know, just the other day I was having a conversation and where still today there are organizations specifically advocating either African American women or youth or whatever the title may be, And there seems to still not be a clear understanding as to why. Why are we still developing these individual organizations specifically targeting just one race? Where someone who is not African American may say, aren't we supposed to be inclusive? Isn't that the new, the newest terms these days, to be inclusive? But I think it's lack of understanding, or perhaps the history isn't really there. Maybe, what's lacking that someone should still ask that question? Like, what could be missing, or if asked, like, what could I tell someone? If I'm questioned, why do we still need, just as you mentioned, the specific camp for just, for African Americans and so forth. Like, why couldn't it be,
Well, we don't exclude other children that want to come, but the purpose of camp initially was for African American families to have somewhere to send their children because they didn't have any other options. And that's why camp was initially created. We do accept students that are not African American, but again, it is marketed to African Americans. And I think it's important, just as the Greek organizations that they have now, or that they've had for years. I think it's important for like-minded and individuals that look the same to get together to talk about issues that are relevant to them.
Correct.
And to talk about their history and share their history and just come together around different things and just feel good, as long as they're not excluding themselves from the rest of the world. I think at some points in their lives it's important for them to come together in those types of environments.
And I agree. There's many times, depending on your culture, you won't necessarily learn whatever it is that there is to learn in a classroom.
Yes.
So you need these external avenues to then, you know this individual, and you know that individual, and your history this, because where else other than your household would you get the information?
Exactly.
So I think, and I'm just stating African American because we were speaking about it, but there's the Puerto Rican organization, whichever background you're from. So I think it's important.
And I think it helps them to develop a deeper sense of self-pride in who they are.
Correct.
And where they come from.
Excellent, excellent. So you chose Human Services.
I did. I think it chose me.
Yeah, right. In both your undergrad and grad studies. So why is Human Services so important to you?
Well, Human Services is important to me because I was at the Urban League at the time, and I wanted to, and I liked what I was doing, was passionate about developing our community. And so I went into Human Services because it was the degree that was going to further me in the position that I was already in. And I think that the skills and the knowledge that you acquire in the human service arena are transferable if you wanted to take them into corporate. But human service administration, it really, to me, teaches you how to take in an organization, the nuts and bolts of it, and operate it and run it efficiently, from the clients to the board members to the fiscal operations. And so it was important for me to know that, to know all aspects of a human service organization.
And what do you feel is lacking in human services in just our daily lives today? There's a lot going on in the world.
There's a lot going on. And that's a tough topic this week because we just had to do a couple of layoffs. So I think what's lacking in human services, when I first started working at the Urban League, there was a plethora of money. We were getting money from Department of Public Health, Department of Justice, from all kinds of foundations. So I think what's lacking now is foundations and organizations don't see the need. And so what has happened in the past, particularly for the Urban League, when I was running youth and education programs, we had programs that dealt with AIDS awareness, teen tobacco use, teen pregnancy. And I think a lot of times when they see the data and they see that there's a decrease in those populations or decrease in that usage, the funding tends to go away. But that doesn't mean the issues go away. And so what's probably going to happen is those issues are going to climb again incrementally, where the money's going to have to go back there. So then you're dealing with more intervention instead of prevention. So I think we don't have enough programs that deal with the prevention to make sure that our young people specifically are doing what they need to do to become healthy adults.
And I think the key, I think that's the difference when you're sitting at, depending which boardroom you're sitting in, you know, oh no, we're doing great, we've detected all of these individuals, we have them all under control, you know, there's a decrease in all of these areas, so we need to, you know, write a new grant
Put
to
the money
keep it
somewhere
there.
exactly.
To keep it where it is. Whereas the other boardroom, they're like, oh, that group over there, they're doing fine, they don't need it.
It looks good.
It looks good, right?
Yes.
So to, you know, keep it sustainable, we still need those funds.
Yes, we still need those types of programs.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. So you are very passionate about positive development of young girls and women.
I am.
I know. So what are some ways that you've reached out to support these services or reached out to this population?
I realized I was passionate, I always have been, but didn't realize my passion until I was in graduate school and I had to do a graduate project, and it was on lack of self-esteem in African American adolescent females. Long title, a lot of research. But that's when I realized that I was really passionate about the development and empowerment of girls and women, because I couldn't find data on it, and I couldn't find a lot of things that were there for them to do. So at that point, I started interviewing adult women for that project because they didn't have the data on the adolescents. And that's when I was finding out that adult women, what they felt they needed in adolescence and what they feel they need now. As an adult myself, I am, I didn't start reading positive affirmations and things until I got older. And so I wanted to make sure that young girls were getting that sooner. And I had a young daughter at the time. She's 30 now, but she was in her adolescence and teens at the time. And so a lot of that was me trying to find out ways to affirm and reinforce and reaffirm her. And so some of the ways that I've reached out, I think once I realized I was passionate, long story short, once I realized that was where my passion lied, the universe has a way of aligning things to start coming to you and pushing you towards them. And so all of a sudden I started getting calls to be on boards for Girl Scouts or to sit on different committees. And things just started opening up and happening for me, so I started going in that direction and even further. And then I got a call to ask about BayPath, and I was over the moon excited. I wasn't even that familiar with it when I was first asked to be on the advisory council. Dr. Leary and I sat on the education committee of the Community Foundation. And that's where she had a couple of conversations with me. She asked me to join BayPath and on the advisory council. That was back in 2010. And then 2 years later, I was asked to teach a course there. And it was the Women as Empowered Learners and Leaders course. And I said no. Oh. Because I had never, I said no.
So passionate.
I know. No, what? I said no because I didn't think I was born to teach.
Okay.
And I didn't see myself as a teacher. And that kind of made me like, how can I teach? How can I teach? And then I had an epiphany a year or two later, and I called and said, okay, I think I'm ready. And that was in 2012, and I've been teaching the course ever since. And so I get to do what I'm passionate about each and every day, just because I get to go into the classroom and teach adult women. And I know that even though I'm not in the lives of young girls every day, all the time, I know what I do in the classroom trickles down to their daughters and their nieces and their cousins and just what they do out in the community. So that's my biggest thing in terms of how I reach out.
So isn't it a full circle though? So during your graduate studies and during your project, you could not find certain statistics based on young African women or whatever the sort may be. isn't that a foundation or a core reason why then to create an organization specifically for that population?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So when asked, you know, why do we need this? Because it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Now there's probably more data now. That was about 10, 12 years ago, but I couldn't find anything at the time.
So isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So what message about education and goals would you give to a group of Girl Scouts?
Education and goals. I think that I would tell them, and I know it's hard at a young age to figure out what you're passionate about. So in language that they could understand what makes you really happy. Or in a perfect world, what would you like to be when you grow up, or what would you like to do, and to know that you can attain that.
Nice.
I think that's what I would tell them.
Wonderful. So, getting a little mushy now.
Oh, no, please don't.
You're also a grandmother of 3.
I am, my babies.
Yeah. So, what are you saying to them about life? What are you letting them know that you wished you knew sooner about life, about education, about finding a job, just the daily routines? When you put yourself back into that first position at Mass Mutual as a secretary, and you know, are your lessons learned that perhaps you didn't know you would encounter at that point?
Yeah.
So what do you tell your grandchildren?
My grandsons. You know, I'm that mom that was talking to my kids like that too, and still do.
Right.
And so I think I give them the same message, my grandsons, that I gave my children, and it's, what do you want to do? And I still give the same message to my children to this day when they're going through challenges, for them to do their best every day, and that their best can change based on how they feel. And so just to figure out what's going on in your life and learn the lessons, and give it your all, really give it your all. Don't take anything. I'm a Deepak Chopra super fan. So when we talk about just different things that he talks about in the spirit and feeding that, I talk to them about those things. And I take advantage of, I take them to school every morning. So I take advantage of the car rides.
Yes.
And I take advantage of the FaceTime. Thank goodness for technology now. And so I talk to them all the time. And my main thing with them, more so than giving them guidance, because their parents do that, is letting them know that I am there for them all the time, no matter what.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So
message.
they love their nanny.
Of course they do. Of course they do. I also believe that one of your children is engaged.
Yes, she is. Both of my children are engaged.
Too?
Can you believe it?
Oh,
yes.
my goodness.
My daughter, my son had gotten engaged in July, and my daughter got engaged in, I think it was December or January. I can't remember which. But of course, I'm wedding planner for my daughter.
That was my next question.
I'm not sure if she's a bridezilla or not. I won't call my child that. Okay. But the wedding planning is going great. It really is. I'm really excited about it. She's constantly texting me pictures. We have settled on venues. She has selected her dress. So the planning is, I'm really having a good time with it. And she had even said to me a couple of weeks ago, you know, Mom, you're so organized with this, you might want to think about doing this as a job.
Why not?
And I said, no, I think you will have taken all of the wedding planning out of me. It's been fun. It's been an experience, but it's been fun. I'm having a good time with it. Yeah.
And then now switching a little gears to a little bit more fun, you served as a candidate for a Dancing with the Stars theme fundraiser.
Yes.
How long was that?
That was back in April.
In April
of this year.
Okay,
yes,
yeah,
that was
in
back
April.
in April. Yes.
So tell me what you learned. What did you get out of it? I mean, I know it was all new. I remember.
It was definitely new.
And I know it was a little bit tasking.
Yes, it was a bit intimidating. And I thought, me dance? What?
Yeah. So tell me, what did you learn? I mean, you know, your grandma of 3. You've got your children. You've very seasoned individual, and then you're learning something new.
Totally new.
dancing?
You know, it was an awesome experience, and
Yes.
I often tell people when I talk about the experience, the things that, and he was an awesome instructor. It was Gunnar, and I won't mess up his last name, ballroom dancing in Enfield, Connecticut.
Yeah.
He was such an awesome instructor that the things, and I learned the dance steps, of course.
Yes, I know.
It was tango-ish. But the things that he taught me on the dance floor and in conversation carried out into my real life. I mean, just taught me about body language and using your body when you're talking with people and communicating, and not just on the dance floor, but in everyday life, and standing up straight. And I mean, he just taught me so much without even realizing it in our conversations about interacting with people. That I thought I learned more from that in our conversations than the steps on the dance floor. So when I was thanked for actually participating, I was like, no, thank you.
Yeah,
it was an awesome experience.
Exactly.
I was nervous at first. I laughed when I was first asked, like, oh,
I remember.
Okay. But no, it was an awesome experience.
But you did fabulous,
Thank
and it was
you.
breathtaking
Thank
to
you.
watch you on the floor dancing. It was
Thank you.
absolutely breathtaking. One last question. What are you most proud of yourself?
See, you know, as a woman, I'm not going to go right to myself. You know, honestly, what I'm most proud of is that as a single mom, I raised two outstanding human beings, my son and my daughter. Outstanding. They are compassionate, empathetic, great work ethic. They love their mother. They love their children. They love their significant others. I have raised some outstanding individuals. I think that is what I really am most proud of, that I did that.
That's wonderful. But they couldn't be where they are if there weren't you.
Okay. So what did I do right?
So you did it all right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining the GyrlSense show.
This was fun. Thank you,
Thank
Maria.
you. Thank you. I'm Maria del Carmen, your host. This grassroots show is taking root. Visit GyrlSense.com for more information about our guests, and join us again for more GyrlSense.